So as Jim just said, I work with Vermont DEC. I've been responsible for overseeing the cyanobacteria monitoring program that we have on Lake Champlain since 2012, but also helped develop that while I was a technician at the University of Vermont. So I've been active with cyanobacteria in Vermont for over 30 years, and I've been very fortunate in the last year to be able to serve as a team leader for a national team that's looking at harmful cyanobacteria. It's supported by the organization that you'll see up in the corner of the slide there, the ITRC, the Interstate Technology and Regulatory Council, which is an offshoot of the Environmental Commission of States. Each state has a commissioner on this with this organization, and the organization itself serves as a liaison between the federal government and state government. Bringing concerns from the top down and the bottom up. And ITRC is a state-led coalition that is working to improve how states implement management that enforces federal and state regulation. So they're basically translating science into decision-making. They're supported by EPA, the Department of Defense, the Department of Defense and Energy. They give actual monetary support to the ITRC, as well as other kinds of support. There are members of the ITRC in public industry and in the business world that pay annual membership dues, and then the states support by allowing their staff to participate in these kinds of programs. So again, they're working to improve environmental decision-making, particularly where technology is involved, to make sure that it's based on sound science and that it's also helping to promote healthy communities, the economy and the environment. ITRC, the offshoot of ECOS and AROS. Federal folks can be on the team. State government are strong supporters of all of the teams that are in process. There are also public and tribal stakeholders, industry members, and as many academics as we can do. So basically they draw from a wide range of experience, a wide range of knowledge to support the work that these teams are doing. And every year the ITRC puts together a list of proposals on subjects they'd like to investigate. And sometimes that comes from the ECOS organization, sometimes it comes from the states. They solicit ideas, and then several of them are selected, and they ask for proposals. And that is how Vermont got involved. The ITRC decided they wanted to work in the cyanobacteria realm, and they solicited some proposals, and the one that Vermont put forward was selected. Once the board of the ITRC decides they're going to support it, we get a budget, we get administrative support and a mentor within the program, and then ITRC reaches out through as many different venues, primarily to the states, but to a lot of different business venues as well, looking for members to form this team. The team are responsible for doing the research, identifying, for fine-tuning the topic that they want to investigate, decide what they want to talk about in the end, doing that research, developing the document itself and all of the tools and outreach materials that go with it. Once that thing is finalized, the team members actually do the outreach and the training. Sometimes that's international. We've got folks that have been in China and Europe most recently, but a lot of times it's local or across the country. ITRC focuses primarily on chemical forms of pollution. They're active with remediation processes. They look at water, land, and air. The cyanobacteria monitoring program represents the first time that they've actually gone into the biological world. So we're kind of breaking the ice for them, and they've been very interested in what we're doing. Again, we're working to provide guidance and training primarily for state regulators. But for me, the most important thing that's been coming out of this opportunity is that in addition to having worked with many of you over the last 10 or 15 years in the Northeast, I'm now expanding that range of contacts across the country into federal government and other state governments. And we're building this really amazing network of folks with lots and lots of experience. Training focuses primarily on the state and local government folks, but the ITRC trains a lot of folks in the private sector, folks that actually are needing to respond to whatever the concerns are at the local level. training can be done. You can read the document from cover to cover on the website, but they also do online trainings like webinars. They produce fact sheets, and they will do classroom trainings if folks are interested in having a team come to do that work. In 2019, you can see that harmful cyanobacteria blooms was the second team that came on board that year, and the rest of them are basically focused on chemical things. The PFAS PFOA question, that team's actually been active for more than 2 years because it is such a huge concern right now. Most of the time, teams are roughly anywhere from 18 months to 24 or 26 months between the time when they're formed and where that final training is done. So I am one of the 2 leaders. Ben Holcomb from the Utah DEQ is the other person that's helping me lead this team. In 2019, by the end of 2019, we had over 200 people from across the country signed up to be members of the team. 90 of them were state members, a lot of academics, a lot of private non-governmental organizations and nonprofits, as well as business. So a really big, diverse group of people coming together. We've been writing steadily after identifying what our document's going to be, and we're now in the process of figuring out, what it really is going to look like. We've identified the information that we want to be in there, and now we have to figure out what it's going to look like. We're envisioning that there's going to be a web page associated with the ITRC, which will have some key pieces of information on it. Our target audience is a lake manager that has probably a lot of experience in managing lakes, but maybe it's not very much in the cyanobacteria realm, or they're experiencing cyanobacteria for the first time, or they want to find out what's new. So assuming that they have a little bit of experience, they can dive right in and figure out, I want to know what I need to do to prevent a bloom from forming in the first place, or I want to know how to manage the bloom that's lying right offshore of my drinking water facility right now. What do I do? And so you'll be able to dive into that. We anticipate that cyanobacteria are very photogenic. So we're going to have probably videos as well for folks that may have never seen a cyanobacteria bloom, maybe have never seen a bloom of that particular species. There'll be some visual things there as well. And then you can read from cover to cover by navigating through the website on the other side there. It's got to be an overview introduction. There is so much to talk about cyanobacteria. They're actually trying to limit us to 200 pages, which is, I think we're going to break that barrier. But there's so much to talk about. So the introduction will introduce cyanobacteria, but it's going to focus on the key aspects of their ecology and their biology that allow us to actually have a hope of managing them. So there'll be that, but we'll provide lots of resources. So if you want to learn more about genetics of cyanobacteria, here's a read more that you can then dig deeper. The 2 key concepts that we initially focused on were about how we manage cyanobacteria directly. Nutrient management right now, as far as we can tell, really is the thing that offers the most likely long-term approach to reducing the frequency and severity of cyanobacteria. So we're thinking that we're probably going to have a graphic with all sorts of land uses, because nutrient loading is often connected to land use. We'll have a graphic that will allow you to hover over the graphic, select a particular land use. When you do that, then tools that are available to reduce nutrients in that particular land sector will pop up. There'll be a fact sheet associated with each of them that will explain what it is, a relative cost, any pros and cons, and then hopefully point you to some of the most recent examples of how that particular strategy is currently being used across the country, so that you again can dig deeper, find out what people have had for success. Same thing for in-lake management. That was the original reason that Vermont put forward this proposal. Information on how to actually get rid of a cyanobacteria bloom in a lake is scattered in a lot of different places. There's a lot of people trying to sell you things that we don't really know work. And so we're hoping that this will serve as a resource for people to point them at the things that we know is working, that people have experience on. So the same thing, you'll be able to put in some characteristics about your lake. It'll pop up a series of strategies that might be applicable in your lake, and then you can dig deeper to find out whether or not they make sense for you. As the team got together and talked, it was pretty obvious there needed to be more than just those 2 things in this document. So we have another section that will focus on communication and outreach. So many of you know that the first time a cyanobacteria bloom shows up, it's kind of mass chaos. So this is the idea, is to help you identify things that you need to talk about right now, what can wait a little bit, and what can really wait till the winter, and to help you develop a response plan, know who your stakeholders are and how you can talk to them. And then the final piece will be monitoring and assessment. As Jennifer mentioned, there's so many ways that we can measure cyanobacteria. They return different pieces of information, and you need to understand how to use that when you're building a monitoring and assessment program. 2020, we have 1 year left. We'll be finalizing the text and all of the associated fact sheets and graphics and all that kind of thing has to be finalized by May. The material goes out to the EPA, the Department of Defense and Energy. They review it, give us comments, and at the same time, we're also working on developing our training materials and our training approaches. Ideally, we're done by November of 2020, and training should be underway in 2021. But because it's the last year doesn't mean we don't need further help. We always need writers and editors and particularly reviewers, because if the stuff that we're putting together doesn't make sense to the people that are supposed to use it, it doesn't help a lot. So if you're interested, you can sign up to join itrcweb.org. You can select the Cyanobacteria team and sign up. You'll have to answer a few questions and they'll make sure you're good. Don't sign up with Gmail because you get rejected. We get a lot of really crazy people signing up. So if you don't have if you have a government address or .edu or a business address, you're good. But Gmail is usually a little touchy. We're really in the process of designing our trainings right now. Joan Baskenis here is a member of the team, and she's been working with a couple of other folks to put together a survey about how people might learn best about cyanobacteria. How should we communicate about cyanobacteria when it's on your leg? So we'll be hopefully sharing that with the CMC so that you can help us figure out how we're going to do our trainings. Okay.